afternoon or good morning to you all, wherever you are. So thank you for the invitation, Ebenezer, and to the whole IALTA Ghana. I'm happy to be here. It's my pleasure to be speaking, okay, before the members of your organization. Let me now share my screen. Please let me know if I can be heard or
Yes.
if my...
Loud and clear.
Fantastic. Okay, so can you see my PowerPoint now? I'm sharing to you my screen.
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I was asked actually to talk about the teaching of English grammar, trends, and trajectories. I think Ebenezer attended one of my webinars, okay, and he contacted me and asked me if I can give the same lecture to your organization, IALTA Ghana. Although I tried to, update the lecture and to include some features of the Ghanaian English. Okay, so today I'll be talking about some trends and trajectories in the teaching of English grammar. I'd like to believe that the majority of you, if not everyone, is an English teacher. Is my assumption correct? That you are either an English teacher or you are a graduate student of English language education or linguistics, okay, to that effect. Okay, so my lecture outline will be something like this. I'll start with a bit of the backgrounder, the current status of the topic, and some of the corpora where my discussion will be based on, and then I'll focus on the grammatical studies, okay, and then go on with the concluding remarks at the end, okay. So we will start with some thoughts, or probably you can call them facts if they are facts, or probably just barely opinions, okay. So just some of them here. You can always interact with me through the chat, or you can raise your hand if you wish. Okay. So again, these are either unfounded opinions. Probably they are just my thoughts. Okay. One is that the English language proficiency for our students has apparently been declining, based on reports and some studies. At least in the Philippines, that has been published elsewhere, that the English language proficiency, or the ELP of our students, apparently has been declining in recent years. I'm not sure what the ELP of your students are in Ghana, okay, but it appears that in almost all parts of the world, that is the trend, okay? Another one is that grammar has not been given so much attention in English classes, at least in the Philippines, okay? I'm not so sure what the setup is in Ghana, but in the Philippines, since we have restructured our educational system, now we now have the K-12, we now have senior high school. So the teaching of English grammar is not like during our time when I was in high school or when I was in elementary, okay, where it's a mandatory course. The teaching of grammar now is just incidental, okay, like if there's a need for it to be discussed, okay, or, when they're talking about something and they need to highlight a particular grammar point, then they'll be talking about English grammar, but it's not anymore like part of the curriculum. Okay, and that the English subject, okay, for some, has been viewed as a set of rules or facts that should be learned, and hence some students are not very fond of English grammar. Okay, I mean, if there are, those are the students who probably are either majoring in English or those who pursue MA or a PhD in English. So these are just, I repeat, just some thoughts or some opinions, but some of them could also be facts, okay? Again, these are some unconfirmed observations, okay? One is that teachers have limited resources in teaching English grammar. I mean, grammar in general, or particularly English grammar. And that if ever they have resources, these are either generic or dated, okay? or something that have been passed on to them from generation to generation, and that means it's already dated. Okay, as we know, there are a lot of things happening in the English language. So if your textbook or teaching resources are not updated, okay, then that's a bit problematic. In these resources, where they are either generic or dated, the sample sentences are either based on either the teacher's own dialect or idiolect or sociolect, okay, whatever his idiolect is or the sociolect is, okay. The sentences are unusually neat and syntactically flawless, which means that they are not authentic, okay. It means that they were just invented or for convenience. They were just created for purposes of analyzing a particular linguistic phenomenon, okay. The study of the English grammar has become the concern of English majors only, or those pursuing masters or Ph.D. in the linguistics or language education. So that has become the trend. So for those who are not into English language education, or those who are not majoring in English, they're not that concerned about English grammar, okay? Or probably they're not even knowledgeable or aware that there are actually a set of grammar rules, or they're not very particular with their grammar. So again, these are some unconfirmed observations. Okay, so now I'll be talking about the teaching of English grammar, some trends and trajectories. I'll start off with the trend, okay? And the trend in the teaching English grammar is all about using corpus, okay, in teaching English grammar. I'm not so sure if you have already heard all about corpus, but during the pandemic, I have given a lot of online lectures, webinars, all about using corpus in the teaching of grammar, or using corpus in research or in linguistic analysis, or just corpus linguistics in general. So for today, I'll be talking all about English grammar, but at the same time, in discussing this one, I'll anchor my presentation with the corpus, okay, or corpus-based results of teaching grammar. Okay, so I'm not so sure if you encountered already some of these resources, okay, but this is the trend when we talk about English grammar. You know, you have to make use of corpus, okay. The best grammar resource materials, I call them the trilogy of English linguistics. They are all corpus based, and when I say the trilogy of English linguistics, I mean that's Quirk et al. 1985, the Huddleston and Pullen 2002, and Biber et al. 1999. So those are the three. I mean, it's labeled as the three most important resource in the teaching of English grammar using corpus linguistics as an approach. Okay, so that's the trend. So if you intend to become an English teacher all your life, so these are the three resources or three books that you should have. At the end of this lecture, if you're interested to have a copy of that one, I can always share with you. I have that one in my Google Drive, and I can share with you the PDF copies of these three important resources when it comes to English linguistics or corpus linguistics. So as I was saying, the trend is now using corpus in teaching grammar. So I'm showing here just one of the many books all about corpora and language teaching. Okay, this one is from Karen Eichmer. A guide to using corpora for English language teachers. This one is by Robert Poole. We have how to use corpora in language teaching. We have, and this is the newest, okay? Vander Viana is a good friend of mine, okay? And this is all about teaching English with corpora, which is a resource book. So this one contains a lot of activities. I think this is more than 300 pages. Contains a lot of activities on how to teach English grammar, like particularly grammar points with the use of corpora. Okay, since my talk is all about English grammar and not corpus linguistics, I won't dwell much on what corpus is, on how to use corpus in the teaching of English grammar, but I'll focus more on English grammar. But elsewhere, I mean, in other webinars, online lectures, I usually talk about that one. Okay, sure. I'd love to, I love interacting with you through the chat. So if there's anything that you'd like to, respond to, okay, yeah, please do utilize our chat group. Our chat box. Okay, that's good. Good. Okay. Let me know too if I speak a bit fast. Let me know too if there's anything that you want me to, for example, elaborate more or discuss more about. You just let me know, okay? So I'll now start with, these are the corpora actually that I have used in the presentation, okay? Like when I talk of corpus or corpora, corpus means it's a body of text, okay? It's a body of text. So one of the most utilized corpus of English when it comes to the description of the linguistic features of a particular variety of English would be this one, the IC or the ICE, okay? Or this is the International Corpus of English. And as you can see here, these are the countries that that actually have a corpus of English. Okay, we have Canada, East Africa, okay? And the English of West Africa is not very different from East Africa, although of course there are distinct characteristics of East and West. So we also have here, like for example, Jamaica, we have Nigeria, we have Sri Lanka, we have the Philippines, of course, we have Hong Kong, India, and so forth and so on. And there are a lot of publications, okay, describing the grammatical features of these varieties using the ICE or the International Corpus of English. Again, if you are into Corpus Linguistics, or if you want to have a copy of the IC, I can always, loop you or include you in my G Drive. Okay, so I'm showing you now the biggest source when it comes to corpus. So this is the English-corpora.org. So this is a lot of them are actually monitor corpus, but some are already static corpus. So you can just Google this one. You can type in English-corpora.org, and it will actually. I think I can show it to you, and wait, and you can actually see it for yourself. For example, here, okay. Can we possibly remove the okay? I can do that one. You know that every time someone enters, there's like a sound. I'm trying to remove that one. Okay. Where do I remove that one? Allow participants to. I'm trying to remove that one. Okay. Probably for the host, can we remove the sound when someone enters? Because I'm in AirPods. I'm in AirPods, and you can just imagine that. Okay, let me just remove my AirPods. Okay. Because it's, yeah, there you go. Can I be heard?
Yes, please. We can hear you, though.
Can I be heard? Yeah. Yeah, I removed the AirPods because of every time someone enters. It's a bit, yeah. There you go. Can you hear me? Can I get a thumbs up if you can hear me?
Yes, please. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. So let me now continue. Okay, so what I'm showing you now is the English-corpora.org. So if you are on your laptop, you can just go to this site. It's just type in the English-corpora.org, and this is what you get. For example, so here we have the biggest corpus to date, and we now have the news on the web, or the now corpus, which is considered now the biggest corpus to date, okay, that you can actually access. It has 15.7 billion words, okay, and this one is 2010 up to yesterday. And when you say yes, the monitor corpus, it is able to like gather or collect all words that are published in the web. Okay, so it has now 15.7 billion words. Okay, most of my examples here come from the global web base of English, or GLOBE, where Ghana is part of the 20 countries. Philippines is also part of the 20 countries. But even for the news on the web or the now, the 20 countries here, I mean, one of them is Ghana. And here in the GLOBE corpus, one of the 20 countries included also here is Ghana, and so is Philippines. Okay, so if you'd like, for example, look for the features of Canadian English or Philippine English or any of the inner or outer Englishes, you can consult this corpora. If there's anything that you'd like to clarify about the grammar point, you can always consult the corpora or corpus. Okay, so here we have the coronavirus corpus, which is the newest. Okay, it just started in 2020, and the coverage is until yesterday. Okay, there you go. And then we have other corpora included in this website. We also have the corpus, the movie corpus, the COCA here, which is one of the most used corpus actually in research and even in teaching. This is the corpus Contemporary American English and the corpus of historical American English. Okay, the other corpora like the Brown corpus or the LOB corpus and the Frown and the Flow corpus actually have their own website. But what I'm showing you here would be the website, which contains a lot of corpora that you can actually utilize either in your teaching or in your research. Okay, I'm showing you here just to give you an idea. Okay, I just played actually with one of the here that's featured, and that's the GLOBE corpus. Okay, this is the GLOBE corpus or the global web-based English, because Ghana is one of the 20. So I look up some of the supposedly Ghanaian English words. Okay, these are the English words that are true in Ghana, but probably not in other countries. Okay, and true enough, when I look at the corpus, when I consulted the GLOBE corpus, okay, that's where I discovered that they are only known in Ghana. In the same manner, some words that are only known in Philippine English. Showing you here. For example, you have the expression chop box. Okay, so you guys only people in Ghana would know what a chop box is. Okay, so this expression is not present in our English. Okay, we don't know what that means, or probably we have a counterpart of that one, but it's definitely not chop box. As you can see here in the results of the corpus investigation, we have here US, Canada, Great Britain, Ireland, Australia, New Zealand, and you have here the Ghana, that's the GH, and the PH here is the Philippines. As you can see, there's no occurrence in any other variety of English, but there are 9 in Ghana, and that is something else. Okay, another one is a bushmeat. Bushmeat actually West and East African English, okay, or probably African English. Okay, as you can see here, there's like one in Hong Kong and some also in Canada, but in the other parts, okay, there's no occurrence of the word bushmeat. Okay, there's like 22 occurrences in Ghana, and there are some also in Kenya and Tasmania and Nigeria and Zambia. But as you can see in other countries like Philippines or Malaysia or Singapore or Bangladesh, Pakistan, we don't have, okay, the expression bushmeat. So there are like certain expressions that are only true to a particular variety of English. Okay, another one is the expression outdooring. That's very Ghanaian English. Okay, like we are outdooring. I'm not sure if you have indooring. Okay, but what I've heard only is that you have the expression outdooring. Okay, but not necessarily indooring. Do you have a word indooring? Okay. Yeah, you have chop money, chop box. Okay, these are very interesting Ghanaian English, actually. Something that we are not familiar with in the Philippines. Okay, so you have outdooring. Well, I've not used outdooring in my English. I mean, in speaking. Okay, so I'm really interested how it functions in your Ghanaian English. Okay, you also have expressions like and stool or this tool. Okay, again, as you can see here, there are 13 occurrences in Ghana, but not one in other varieties of English. So that's distinctively Ghanaian English. Okay, so I'd like to show you too that we also have what we call very distinct Philippine. Okay, so if you have not heard of Philippine English, so I'd be introducing some of you, and just to know that you have distinct Ghanaian English, and we also have distinct Philippine English, and there's some words that you probably have not heard in your variety, but it's very popular in our variety of English. So here we have, again, I also consulted the Globe, or this is the global web-based English. So we have what we call teleserie. Okay, in some parts of the world, they just call it series. Like, what series are you watching on Netflix? So we have series, some they call it soap probably, but here in the Philippines we call it one teleserie. Okay, you know, I'm really watching this teleserie where there's one in Ghana, but in other countries there's no occurrence of the word teleserie. So that's very Philippine English. Okay, we also have the word kikay. Again, that's very Philippine English. Kikay is actually like a Tagalog, our most dominant language in the Philippines. Okay, but we use it in English context. Okay, so instead of saying vanity kit, for example, so like I'm carrying vanity, I have to go to the restroom and I'm carrying my vanity kit with me. We say, do you have a kikay kit? Yeah, I have my kikay kit with me, which means that is your vanity kit. So we don't say vanity kit, we say kikay kit. He's so kikay, instead of saying he's so vain. She's so vain, we say she's so kikay. Okay, as you can see, only in the Philippines. There are some, but you know, not. I mean, the figures are not as striking as in the Philippines. We also have the term baon. Okay, in other countries, that's the equivalent of packed lunch. For example, in Korea or in Japan, they call it packed lunch. So baon for us is also packed lunch, but it's more than packed lunch. Okay, even allowance, for example, like monetary allowance. Okay, we call that one baon as well. So the meaning of baon is actually wider in scope and in meaning than the usual lunchbox. So again, that's very Philippine English. We also have presidentiable. Okay, in other countries, you probably just call that one, who's your presidential bet, or who's the candidate, okay, or just a bet. Okay, for example, Donald Trump is running as a presidential candidate in 2024, but here in the Philippines we call that one a presidentiable. Okay, like, wow, he's a presidentiable, meaning that he's running as a president. Oh, outdooring in Ghanaian English has the sense of child christening. That's interesting. Okay, outdooring. Okay, see, I've learned a new word today. Okay, that's really interesting. Good. Okay, and here also we have presidentiable. We also have like vice presidentiable, or if you are running for senator, then we call you a senatoriable. Okay, but those are only limited to senator, president, and vice president. We cannot call, for example, someone running for governor as governable, or someone running for mayor as mayorable. So you see, there are also limitations to that, but the suffix able is attached to president or vice president or to senator to form the word presidentiable, or someone who's running for that position. Okay, we also have the term like kilig. Okay, again, there's no direct translation to that one to English, but it's close to probably thrill or some exhilaration. Okay, but the kilig for Philippine English is so distinct that you can only explain, or you can only express it using the term kilig. So for example, you saw, say, a celebrity, okay, or your celebrity crush. You know, in the Philippines, they're very fond of celebrities. Or for example, you are idolizing, let's say, a Korean boy band, say for example BTS, okay, and when you hear them sing, you feel a certain, kilig that is not the equivalent of thrill or exhilaration or whatever that is. So again, it's not captured by any other word in English, but just the word kilig. So the Filipino audiences here would understand what I'm trying to say here when you say kilig, as opposed to just thrill or exhilaration, okay? So thank you, Dorothy, for explaining. So in Ghana, the baby is kept indoor for some time, probably until 3 months. Oh, so when the baby is finally brought out to be named and allow everyone to see him or her, it's termed as outdooring. That's interesting. So, you know, that's again, that captures your culture, because in the Philippines, we probably, I mean, the equivalent of that one in the Philippines would probably be baptism, okay? But you know, babies here go out even if they're newborn. They can always go out for everyone to see. So again, that has something to do with our culture. Okay, great. So I was just explaining all about kilig. As you can see here, there are 68 occurrences in the Philippines. It's I mean none in any other countries. So again, that's distinctly Philippine English. Okay, so I just showed you that actually with the use of corpus, you can describe the linguistic features of any variety of English. And so what I will be doing here in the next slides to come will be talking about English grammar, but at the same time, like referring back to corpus, what they say, and so forth and so on. Because as I said in the beginning, the trend in the teaching of English grammar is actually the use of corpus. Okay, so again, I'll be explaining all about English grammar, and then later on we'll be presenting. Actually, I had to delete some of the slides. Okay, I had to delete a lot of slides about the corpus results of this English grammar points, because most of them are actually all about Philippine English, and it may not be of interest, okay, to the audiences. Okay, little did I know that there will be some Filipinos in the audience. Okay, but anyway, I'll focus more on the grammar points in the succeeding slides. Okay, as you probably would remember, okay, when we talk about English grammar, we talk about, you know, the parts of speech, right? Okay, so since we are all English teachers here, let's have a quick review of the parts of speech. Okay, yes, I'll be asking people, can someone, or could you possibly type in our chat box the grammar points, I mean the parts of speech that you recall? Just, you know, just type, okay, I can see nouns, I can see pronouns, adverbs. Thank you, Philip and Alex. Okay, then we have nouns, verbs. What else? We have prepositions, we have adjectives. What else? Okay, articles. What else? We have conjunctions, we have prepositions. There's one more. Conjunction. There's one more that has not been, an interjection. Okay, so those are the parts of speech. Okay, so since I cannot highlight all of them, I'll be only highlighting a few of them. Okay, so we will start with verbs and auxiliaries. In the usual English language classrooms, for some reasons, we start with the teaching of nouns, right? So we always start with the teaching of nouns, and then after nouns, we go to pronouns. After pronouns, we go to verbs. After verbs, we go to adjectives, and then after adjectives, we go to adverbs. Usually these are called the contentives, or the content words, and these are usually the focus of any English grammar lesson, okay? Then at the end, I mean the other parts of speech, like the prepositions or the conjunctions and the interjections, are usually not given so much attention, okay? So what I'll be highlighting here would be the ones that are not usually given so much attention in the ordinary English language classrooms, okay? So as you can see here, I am discussing first verbs and auxiliaries because that should be the trend, okay? In elementary, though, I would understand why the usual teaching of English grammar would start with nouns, okay? That's because of what we call the noun bias, meaning that kids would know more, I mean, would be familiar with nouns first before any other parts of speech, okay? I mean, they are able to name, for example, parts of their body. They are able to identify, for example, names of people around them before they can, for example, acquire the word for the actions or any descriptive word for that matter, okay? However, when I mean, when we look at the structure of the English language, okay, you cannot actually have a sentence without a verb, okay? You can have a sentence without nouns or pronouns, but not without verbs. And so the most problematic, okay, or the most important component of any sentence for that matter would be verbs. And so, okay, that should actually be the first focus when you are teaching English grammar. Okay, especially when you start teaching all about the parts of speech, it should be the verbs and auxiliaries, okay, rather than nouns and then pronouns. Okay, so I'll start with verbs and auxiliaries. Again, I don't have to give you a thorough review of all the parts of speech because I believe you are already familiar with them. Okay, the fact that you are English teachers, so I don't have to review you on that. But I'll just be highlighting some of the potential changes, okay, in the English grammar, okay, that probably have not been highlighted in some of your resources. Okay, I'm not so sure what resources you are holding at the moment. Okay, so when we talk about verbs and auxiliaries, okay, I'm constantly checking the chat box just so okay, so okay, I like the idea that I mean your answer, yeah. Is there any reason why you indicated verbs and auxiliaries? Okay, this is, yeah, because auxiliaries are parts of verbs. Good. Okay, I'll get to that. Okay, so when we talk about verbs, okay, verbs, there are many different kinds of verbs. Like we have, I mean, when you say verbs, this would be the three main categories. So we have the full or the lexical verbs. These are the open class verbs, okay, meaning that they keep on growing. That's why they are called the open class, okay. A lot of nouns now are being used as verbs, okay, like Googling, for example, downloading, and so forth and so on. So these are the full verbs or the lexical verbs. Then we also have the primary verbs. These are only 3 items that are used as either full verbs, or they can also function as auxiliary verbs or modal auxiliaries. And then we have now the modal auxiliaries. Okay, so these modal auxiliaries could be, I mean, there are actually closed class, but as you can see later on, there are already some auxiliary verbs that are emerging, okay, that do not belong to the usual list of modal auxiliaries. So the reason why I labeled this one as verbs and auxiliaries is that when we discuss verbs, we just don't focus actually on verbs, okay, but we should also be discussing auxiliaries, because the verbs, the full verbs or the lexical verbs, are as important as the auxiliary verbs, or as important as the auxiliaries or the auxiliary verbs, or auxiliaries or the auxiliary verbs are as important as the full verbs or lexical verbs. Actually, they are very problematic, okay. The reason why they are problematic is that they are not given so much attention, okay, like when do you say that an item is actually an auxiliary verb and not a full verb? Okay, and so there are many uses of that one. Again, I can't discuss everything, okay, so I'll just be highlighting a few that are not actually given so much attention in ordinary English language classrooms. Okay, so here, so I'll focus on modal auxiliary verbs. Okay, so based on observation, what I've noticed so far, and looking also at the English language textbooks, okay, usually when we talk about verbs, okay, usually the discussion would lie on forming the tenses of verbs. Okay, what else? The aspects of verbs. So we focus on the simple aspect, then we go to the perfective aspect, then we go to progressive aspect. Okay, and we teach them the tenses of verbs. Okay, of course, we know that there are only 2 tenses of verbs, actually, just the past and the non-past, and that the future that's supposedly taught as a tense is actually part of the modal, okay, auxiliary verbs, or they are expressed as modality. Okay, so they are taught or they are subsumed under modal auxiliary verbs. So here, The modal auxiliary verbs, for example, are not usually taught very extensively, okay, or they are not highlighted in the discussion of verbs, okay. The central modals, okay, are the ones that are usually mentioned when we talk about auxiliary verbs, that we have central modals like will, would, shall, should, can, could, may, might, okay, and the meanings of this one and the semantics of this, okay, like one, some of them, for example, would mean ability, some would mean something else, okay, like expressing, for example, possibility, and so forth and so on, that we are aware of that one, okay. However, aside from the central modals, we also have what we call the periphrastic modals, okay, or in some resources, they are called the quasi-modals, okay, periphrastic modals because they come in phrases, okay. So there are 4 categories of the periphrastic modals or the quasi-modals. So we have we have what we call the marginal modals, okay, and then we have also the modal idioms, then we also have the semi-auxiliaries, and we have the catenatives or the catenative modals, okay. These are just terminologies. Other resources would probably have another term for them, but since I'm using Quirk et al., so these are the terminologies that are used by Quirk et al. Okay, so in the discussion of models, for example, the periphrastic models or quasi-models are usually not included in the discussion, okay? But so I'm just showing that they actually exist and that they are present in the English language. And as a matter of fact, they are usually present in the spoken texts, okay, especially in the spoken genre, they are actually very much present. So these are the examples of the periphrastic models, okay. The marginal models would be dare and need, okay, or ought to or used to, okay. Again, there are some instances where you can only use a marginal model to express the message that you'd like to express, okay. For example, used to means that you were doing something in the past, but not anymore in the present. So when you say, for example, let's say I used to ride a motorcycle, okay. So that particular used to ride motorcycle, there's no other model that is applicable to this expression, but just the marginal model used to, okay. You cannot interchange it with any other model, okay. So I used to ride motorcycles, okay. The dare and need are also lexical verbs, but they also function as modals. So when you say, I dare you to open the door, then that's a full verb, okay. I need you to open the door, then that's a full verb. But dare and need can also function as modal, and they are not the main verbs, okay. They just function as modal auxiliary. For example, she dared say, okay, don't dare say, okay, or she dared say nothing but. So that one, in that particular sentence, the main verb is say, and then the dare there would be modal. Or I need not tell you what to do, okay. In the I need not tell you what to do, the need there functions as a marginal modal, okay, and not the main verb. But if you say I don't need to tell you that, then need is the main verb. But when you say I need not tell you that, need now becomes a modal, okay. Or we also have modal idioms like had better, would rather, have got to, or be to. Yeah, I'm used to, okay, I used to talk. Could you inform the duration of the webinar, please? Okay. I'll try to finish within less than 2 hours, okay. We also have modal idioms like had better, would rather, have got to, or be to, okay. So for example, I would rather eat in a restaurant than blah blah blah, okay. So again, there are some expressions where you only need or you have to use modal idioms for that matter, okay. There are also semi-auxiliary semi-auxiliaries like be going to, be able to, be likely to, be about to, have to, like I'm going to give you a quiz after that one. Okay, I'm able to visit you. If I'm able to visit you regularly, I would. Okay, so there are, again, these are semi-auxiliaries. And then we also have catenatives like appear to, happen to, seem to, tend to, come to, fail to, and so forth and so on. Like she seems to know the issue. Okay, she appears to be intelligent. Okay, so again, it's close to the verb, but not really the verb itself. So it's just catenative. Okay. So like these are like expressions that you probably would encounter now and then. Like she used to want to be a firefighter, or I didn't used to enjoy green tea, but now I do. Okay, like, hey, you dare not forget me. So you see, these are periphrastic models, or you'd better study for the exam. Okay, the main verb here is study. Then you have you had better, but it's usually the had is usually written this way, like you'd better, or I would rather trust a woman's instinct than a man's reason. So these are just examples of periphrastic models. Okay, why are periphrastic models actually necessary? I mean, why are they not given so much attention in the English language when they are necessary, actually? So I'll just give you some instances where you have to use the periphrastic model equivalent because the central model does not work, actually. So here, have to is similar to must. Like these days, you must work hard if you want to succeed. Okay, that one is perfectly grammatical, right? So you understand that when you say these days, you must work hard if you want to succeed. Does it mean that when need and there are used with negative? Yes, they become modals. Yep. Like I need not elaborate that anymore. Okay, so the need there is a modal. Okay, but if you use I do not need to elaborate that one, then the need there becomes the main verb. Okay, because your auxiliary is the do operator. Okay, here, these days you must work hard if you want to succeed. Okay, so here the must is the appropriate modal, right? But if you are expressing that one in the past, okay, for example, you are narrating it. So say in those days, you cannot anymore use the must here, although they have the same meaning. In those days, you cannot say in those days, you must work hard if you wanted to succeed. Then it becomes ungrammatical. So you have to say in those days, you had to work hard if you wanted to succeed. Because here, the good thing about periphrastic models is that they tend to behave like ordinary verbs because they have the past form. But for must, it does not have the past form equivalent. And so you cannot say in those days, you must work hard if you wanted to succeed. But you can use the periphrastic model equivalent of must, which is have to. Here, for example, another example would be semi-auxiliary. For example, there are certain semi-auxiliaries that can fill slots in the modal verb paradigm where modal auxiliaries of equivalent meaning cannot occur. For example, we know that can means ability, right? Okay, so we say we haven't, we can solve the problem. If that's the positive counterpart of it, we can solve the problem. But if you cannot solve the problem, you cannot say we haven't could solve the problem. You cannot say that. Okay, so what you're going to do would be to use the periphrastic equivalent of can, which is been able to. Then you can say we haven't been able to solve the problem. If you were not able to solve the problem, you cannot say we haven't could solve the problem. Okay, that's not acceptable. But you say we haven't been able to solve the problem. Okay, or another one is that the two. Wait. I am very particular with usernames, okay, because in the past we have already been, okay, there you go. You can say, we know that can, for example, means permission, like, okay, can I go out, or can I use this one? So you can use can to ask for permission, right? But again, there are instances where you cannot use can to express permission, but you can use the periphrastic equivalent of can. So for example, you cannot say to can speak freely is a human right. Okay, like if you are allowed to speak freely, the permission, okay, then it's a human right. But you can use the equivalent of can, which is be allowed to. Then you can say to be allowed to speak freely is a human right. Okay, so there are, and this is just one of the many instances where periphrastic models, okay, is needed because the central model equivalent is not appropriate in a particular sentence. And a lot more of these examples, but I'm just showing you here a few, okay? So that's one. That's why I said verbs and auxiliaries, okay? The necessity of teaching also auxiliaries because they are necessary in the English language. They are actually there. They exist every day. Okay, they are part of our usual conversation, but at times they are not given so much attention in the teaching of the ordinary grammar in classrooms. Okay, now I'm showing you here the active-passive dichotomy. Part of the teaching of English would be all about voices of English. I mean, voices of verbs, right? So all about active and passive. However, I have noticed in some textbook, English textbook, that when the lesson is all about active, passive, or voices of verbs, okay, it's just teaching when you use active and transforming active into passive, or the other way around, transforming passive into active, okay, without highlighting that there are some active-passive dichotomy constraints, meaning that not all constructions in active can actually be passivized, or not all passive constructions can be converted into active sentences. Okay, so we have what we call the active, verb constraints. We also have the object constraints, and we also have the agent constraints. Okay. Okay. For example of verb constraints is that, look at the sentences like, he lacks, yes, come by Eric. Would you like to ask something? Hello? Can you unmute your mic? Or you can just type in your question in the chat, okay? So we don't have to waste a lot of time. Okay, I would, yeah. Use the chat box instead. Okay. Good. So it's just a mistake. Okay, great. Okay. So for example, in the sentence, he lacks confidence. Okay, if you look at the sentence, it looks like an active construction, which means you can passivize it, right? Or they have a nice house, or John resembles his dad. However, these sentences cannot be converted into passive. Okay, so they are active only in construction. You cannot say confidence is lacked by him. Okay, or they have a nice house. You cannot say a nice house is had by them. Okay, or John resembles his dad. You cannot say his dad is resembled by John. Okay, because these are like middle verbs, and they can only exist. They can only be used in the active. Okay, and so that's why it's called the verb constraint. There are instances also where some verbs can only exist in passive. Okay, and hence they're called the passive only. An example of which is like, John is said to be a good teacher, or John is reputed to be a teacher. Okay, you cannot say someone reputed John to be a good teacher, or they reputed John to be a good teacher. We are not interested about the agent or whoever said or whoever did the action. Okay, but what is interesting here would be the object. Okay, who is reputed to be a good teacher? So it's John is reputed to be a good teacher, or John is said to be a good teacher. So this is one of the passive only construction. You cannot convert it into active, okay? Of course, the usual sentence, I was born, okay? I was born in 1971. I was born in Ghana. There's no active equivalent of that one. Never will you say, my mother bore me in Ghana or my mother bore me in 1971. So it's always in the passive construction. So these are the verb constraints. There are also some object constraints, okay? So again, not all sentences with direct object or those with the STVDO pattern, okay, can actually be converted into passive. So look at this sentence, okay? So when can't we convert into passive? One is that if the direct object is a finite clause or a non-finite clause, okay? So here is an example, like John thought that she was pretty. Okay, what did John think? That she was pretty. So John thought what? That she was pretty. So the direct object here is that she was pretty. However, you cannot passivize this one. So the direct object is a finite clause, that she was pretty. You cannot say that she was pretty was thought by John. So you see, it already sounds awkward, right? That's because the direct object is a finite clause. The usual, the prototypical structure of a direct object is a noun phrase. For example, I bought, for example, a bouquet of roses. So a bouquet of roses is an ordinary noun phrase. So a bouquet of roses is bought by me. Okay, or she found, for example, a box of diamonds. Okay, so a box of diamonds, okay, was found by him. So that's the ordinary or the usual structure of a direct object, a noun phrase. But there are other structures of direct objects, like this one, a finite clause or a non-finite clause. Okay, and hence they cannot be passivized. So another one, you cannot say, John hoped to meet her. Again, the direct object here is John hoped what? To meet her, which is a non-finite clause. It's an infinitival clause. So you cannot say to meet her is hoped by John. Okay. Or for example, I want to go home early. Okay. Then you cannot say to go home early is wanted by me. Okay. So again, that's what we call is it to have a structure where such that clause could be used as a subject, that Ghana in West is not? Yes, of course, that subject, that clause can be used as a subject, okay? But here, what I'm saying is that if it's passivized, okay, that I'm talking to you now is not far from reality. That she is my boyfriend is what everyone believes. So that's an example of a that clause used as a subject. Okay, I have nothing against that one. That clause uses a subject. But if you look at the structure of that one, it's in the SLVC pattern. Here, what I'm saying is that it's in the STVDO pattern. This one, the that is used as the direct object. But if you passivize it, okay, then the structure is not the same. Okay. Another one is the agent constraint. Okay, there are times that the agent is not anymore necessary. So that means that you cannot express it in active. For example, sentences like this hotel was built in 1970. Okay, this one is perpetually passive because the agent of the sentence is not necessary, or it's unknown or insignificant, and hence you cannot express it in active. Okay, so you cannot say the construction workers built the hotel in 1970. It's always in a passive, like this hotel was built in 1970. Okay, so again, what I'm highlighting is that when you talk about voices of verbs, we just don't teach our students how to transform active into passive, or the vice versa, passive into active. We should also highlight that there are some constraints in the active-passive dichotomy, which I have discussed today. Okay. Another one that's usually highlighted in the teaching of verbs would be forming the complex verb phrases. Okay. So how should we form complex VP. Okay, when we teach verbs, usually we start with the tenses, it's the past and the non-past. Then we go on with the aspects of verbs. So we have the simple aspect, we have the perfective aspect, then we have the progressive aspect, and then we give examples of those. But what is not highlighted is that how do we form complex verb phrases? Okay, now there are combinations to that one. As you know, complexity, for example, noun phrase complexity or verb phrase complexity are actually the signposts of English proficiency. It means that if you can make your noun phrases or verb phrases, for example, complex, okay, that means that you have very high English language proficiency. Those are markers actually of English language proficiency. So here, Quirk et al. Are telling us that there are actually, combinations that you can actually adapt. So we can encourage our students to form complex verb phrases. Okay, so here we have the symbols A, B, C, and D. Okay, so A, there's a missing slide here. So A is modal, B is perfective, C is progressive, and D is passive. Okay, usually we don't teach them how to form complex verb phrases. We teach this one separately, like we discuss all about tenses and aspects separately, and then we talk about voices of verbs separately, and then we also talk about modals separately, right? But combining all these different concepts, okay, we can actually teach them how to form complex verb phrases, and that there's like a combination that they can actually adapt. So again, A would be using modals. We just talked all about modals a while ago. They could be central modals or periphrastic modals. B would be to form the perfective and not just the simple verb. Then C would be forming the progressive, and then D would be forming the passive of that. Okay, so for example, instead of just saying the doctor examined the patient, that's the prototypical sentence, right? The doctor examined the patient, where you only have a one-word verb, examined. You can actually make it a bit complex, okay, by adapting A. For example, we start with AB, so that means modal and perfective. So the doctor may have examined the patient, or we can have ABC. That's a modal, a perfective, and a progressive. Okay, the doctor may have been examining the patient for 3 hours already. Okay, or we can say an ABD. So meaning the patient may have been examined by the doctor this morning. Okay, or we can have ABCD. So it's all those four. Like the patient may have been being examined by the doctor when I arrived this morning. Okay, or AC may be examining, or ACD may be being examined. Okay, or AD as in maybe examined, BC as in has been examining, the doctor has been examining the patient for 3 hours already, or BCD has been being examined, the patient has been being examined by the doctor when I got home, BD as in has been examined, and CD as in being examined, and so forth and so on. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that when we encourage our students to make their verb phrases complex, okay, we can teach it. We can teach the combinations. We can adapt the A, B, C, D combinations to encourage them to come up with complex verb phrases. Okay, we here in Philippine English, Borlongan in 2010, for example, investigated the verb phrases in Philippine English, okay, in the ICE Philippines, and this is what he discovered actually, okay, that most of the Filipinos would only be adapting or including, for example, here just the modal. Very few occurrences of AB. This is the modal and perfective. But as you can see, very few occurrences of the combination of modal and perfective and progressive, just 5. And there's not one occurrence of the ABCD, like there's a modal, perfective, and progressive, and then it's passivized, okay? And also for the BCD combination, okay, that's the perfective, progressive, and then it's passivized, as you can see here. So this shows that, since our students are not taught this way, okay, they wouldn't even think that it's actually possible to combine all these four codes. Like you can have a modal, you can, make it passive, and then you can also use the progressive or the perfective aspect of the verb instead of just using the plain one-word verb. Okay. Now we go to nouns and determiners. Okay. So this is how usually the functions of nouns are taught in English language classrooms, like very neatly, something like this. Okay. So here I'm showing you the many functions of father in the sentence, like father just came. That's subject, like Mr. Tony is my father. Then that's subjective complement, or the children love their father. That would be object. The children gave their father a hug. That would be indirect object, or we are waiting for our father. That would be object of the preposition. Or Sally never called her stepfather father. That's objective complement. Okay. Or Mr. Tony, the father of one of my students, is here now. That would be a positive. And let me tell you, my father, I love you. That would be vocative. Okay. Here, the structure of the functions of nouns are actually very simple. That's just one word noun, okay, in the form of father. But in reality, and if you look at the corpus, if you do corpus investigations, okay, the structure of nouns, okay, would be more than just one word nouns. I'm showing you examples here, okay? So whatever you do for your country, for example, functions as the subject of the sentence, okay? And the form or the structure of it is a noun clause, okay? Whatever you do for your country, that's a noun clause. Or here, the direct object is again in the form of a non-finite clause. I love going to places I have never been, okay? So this one is a non-finite clause. Or she ordered me to deliver the good news, okay? Again, the objective complement is in the form of a non-finite clause, to deliver the good news. Or the current hullabaloo is whether the endorsement of INC matters at all. So here, the subjective complement is also a noun clause, okay? Or you should do what you ought to do. Here, you should do what? Okay, the direct object is again in the form of a noun clause, okay? Or seeing the youth participate in rallies was an eye-opener to many, okay? The subject here is in the form of, again, a non-finite clause, okay? So this is what I was referring that when we teach, for example, the function of nouns, we just don't use the usual ordinary NPs, but we can check again the corpus and see what are the usual structures of, subjects or direct objects or subjective complement and so forth and so on. Okay, now I'm showing you determiners. Okay, a while ago when I asked the parts of the speech, someone answered articles. Okay, as you may know, articles are subsumed under determiners. Okay, but in the current teaching of grammar, the determiners are actually not a separate part of the speech, okay? They are subsumed under adjectives. That's because they come before nouns. But if you look at Quirk et al., okay, the teaching of nouns would always go along with the teaching of determiners, because you cannot have nouns without determiners, or you cannot have determiners without nouns. And so these two items are always taught hand in hand. So we say nouns and then determiners, okay? And article is just one of the many determiners. So article the, and an, okay, are part of the determiners. And as a matter of fact, the negative no is classified also as article and not just adverb of negation, okay? No is also an article, like, for example, the man, let's say the man went out, okay, or a man is needed here, or no man is needed here. So it has the same function, and so it functions just like article, okay? We also have the possessives like my, our, your, appearing before nouns, okay? So they are determiners or relative pronoun forms, or demonstratives, or indefinite pronouns, or cardinal numbers, or ordinal numbers, or possessive proper nouns appearing before nouns. They are all classified as determiners, okay? Again, you cannot have nouns without determiners, okay? There are some nouns that require zero determiner, but not without determiner, meaning that a determiner before them is not necessary. That's why they have zero determiner. But if you try to, connect the same structure with it, okay, you will still be needing determiner. So for example, milk is healthy. You don't say a milk is healthy or the milk is healthy, or like politics is dirty. You don't need, for example, determiner before that. There are some nouns that do not require determiners before them, okay? But determiners can also be complex, okay? They're not just determiners, okay? In some cases, there could be 3 determiners that appear before nouns, okay? And here is an example. So I'm showing you the quantifiers. Yes, they are here. The quantifiers are here. Okay, they are in the cardinals. Okay, they are quantifiers. For example, 1, 1/2. Okay, they are quantifiers. They can be subsumed here, or 2 or 3. Okay, then they are also they function as determiners. Okay, here all the 5 boyfriends, for example, arrived during the birthday. As you can see, the simple subject here is boyfriend, but there are 3 determiners that appear before the noun. So here, if you have 3 determiners, okay, so now we can classify them as, having a central determiner, we have a predeterminer, and then we have a post determiner. Okay, here the central determiner is the article the, and then the predeterminer is all, okay, and then the post determiners would be like ordinal or cardinal numbers are post determiners. So there's also a structure in there. Okay, never can you say the all 5 or 5 all the boyfriends arrive here. So it's all, the structure is that, if you have a central determiner, then you can only, and there's a list of this one, okay, you can find this one in the Quirk et al. What items are considered predeterminers, what items are considered the central determiner, and which ones are post determiners. Okay, the central determiners would be, the articles, okay, and the indefinite pronouns like some, okay, many, those are the central determiners. Okay. I'm showing you here too that aside from the determiners, there are some confusing expressions that go with nouns. Okay, what I'm showing you here is the use of as such, okay, appearing before nouns. Okay. The usual confusion is that when you use such, okay, and you use a singular noun before that, there should be a determiner before that. Okay, so you don't say such moment. Okay, you have to say such a moment. Okay, or such person. You have to say such a person. But if you don't want to use a determiner before that, then the noun should be in plural, like such people, such problems, such issues. Okay, then you don't use a determiner before that. Okay, so here we've seen that in some outer Englishes varieties, okay, there's a confusion in the use of determiner before singular nouns after such. Okay, this is what the table actually shows us. I'm showing you here another one is majority. Okay, when you use majority, it should always be with a determiner. Okay, you cannot say majority of people hate grammar. Okay, so you have to use determiner before majority. You have to say a majority of people don't like grammar, or the majority do not love grammar. Okay, so that's the proper structure. But we have seen in corpus investigations, for example, that majority is usually used without determiners, as shown here. Okay, and Philippines is guilty of this one. Okay, as you can see here, there are 22 occurrences of out of 76 without article. Okay, but if you look at the Great Britain English, this is ICE-GB. Okay, out of 95 occurrences of majority, all of them appear with article, none without article. But some Asian Englishes like ICE Hong Kong, there are cases where, again, without article here. So this one has already been presented a while ago. Okay. Now we go to adjectives. So those are the things that I highlighted in the teaching of nouns and determiners, for example. Now we go to adjectives, okay, from what I recall, okay, and from what textbooks show when the grammar point is on adjectives. Can you see from my screen? Because someone is saying that he cannot see anything from my screen. Is
Yes,
my
I can
screen
see. It's
okay?
visible.
Great. Okay, good. Okay. Please do check your. I don't know what should you be checking, but I think yeah. You can check your screen. So now we go to adjectives. After nouns and determiners, we go to adjectives. Okay. Usually the teaching of adjectives is that they usually like talk about the adjective forming suffixes and then the comparative and superlative forms of adjectives. Okay, but there's one thing that's very critical when it comes to the teaching of adjectives, and one is the 4 criteria, okay, in determining that items are actually considered adjectives. Okay. Here we have, these are the 4 criteria of adjective that an item is actually an adjective. Okay. Here they function attributively. Okay, like attributive use, meaning that they appear before nouns. That's the attributive function. The second one is predicative function or use. That means that they are used as predicate. Okay, and C is that they can be pre-modified by very, or they can be intensified by very or so, or any intensifier for that matter. And the D is that they have comparative and superlative forms. So if you can do this one with the item, that means that they are adjectives. Okay, so those are the 4 criteria I'm showing you here. But again, there are some adjectives that are considered central and some that are not central, so that they are peripheral. Okay, the first 2 criteria here are a bit crucial. So if they meet the first 2 criteria, then they are considered central adjectives. But if they don't, then they are peripheral adjectives. Okay, they are still adjectives, but peripheral, meaning they are not like the central adjectives. Okay, here is an example, like hungry. Okay, use attributively, like the hungry kid. Okay, the kid is hungry. Okay, she's very hungry, or she's hungrier than him. So hungry can be used in 4 criteria. Okay, infinite, however, as you can see here, okay, has limitations. It can only be used in the first 2, but not in the last 2. Okay, you can say an infinite love, or his love is infinite. So that's attributive and predicative. But you cannot say his love is very infinite, or his love is more infinite than mine. Okay, because it's infinite, you cannot anymore intensify, you cannot anymore there could be no comparative or superlative form of it, because it's already infinite. The meaning of the word is says it all. Old, meaning like former, like old friend. She's an old friend of mine, like a former friend of mine. Okay, it can only be used, for example, in the attributive but not predicative. So you can say she's an old friend of mine. It's not the same as this friend of mine is old. Okay, that's the predicative use, because again, that means the chronological meaning of old. Okay, but you can use it in the like just a very old friend of mine. Okay, or an older friend of mine. Okay, so you can use those, but not as predicative. Okay, afraid, as you can see here, is problematic. You can use in the attributive function. You can only use it in the predicative and everything. So you can say the child is afraid, but you cannot say the afraid child. Okay, or asleep, for example, you cannot say asleep can only be used in a predicative. I'm asleep, or the girl is asleep. But you cannot say the asleep girl is here. Okay, or you cannot also say she's very asleep, or you cannot also say she is more asleep than him. Okay, either you are asleep or you are awake. Okay, but you cannot be more asleep than someone. Okay, so you see there are limitations. Okay, now let's look at the last two here and see if they are adjectives. Okay, and let's see if they meet the 4 criteria of adjectives. Can you say the soon bride? You cannot say the one, right? Or the bride is soon. You cannot say that. Okay, but you can say sooner or later. Okay, or I'll see you very soon. If they only appear, I mean, if they can only meet the primary modification and the comparison, but not the first two, that means they are not adjectives at all, because in reality, they are actually adverbs. More so if they do not meet any of the criteria, all the more that they are not adjectives, then probably they are adverbs, okay? But here, again, when we talk about adjectives, we also have to teach the constraints of this one, okay? And here are the constraints, like some adjectives can only function predicatively, meaning they cannot function in the attributive, like an example of which is afraid, okay? So you can only say the people are afraid, but never can you say the afraid people, okay? So it's problematic. So it's an adjective, but they can only function in the predicate use, or they can only function predicatively. There are some adjectives that can only function attributively, but never predicatively. Okay, an example of which is like sheer, like that's sheer hypocrisy, right? That's total negligence. Okay, those are adjectives that can only function attributively. You cannot say that hypocrisy is sheer. You can only say that's sheer hypocrisy. Or some adjectives cannot be intensified, okay? Like she's pregnant, okay? You cannot say she's very pregnant. You can only say she's pregnant or she's not. Once you're pregnant, okay, either you're pregnant or you're not, or you are asleep, or you're dead. She's dead. She can never be very dead, okay? It's either she's dead or she's alive, okay? Or some adjectives that do not have comparative or superlative forms, okay? Like he's dead, but he cannot be deader than dead. Either, again, he is dead or alive, okay? But there's no comparative and superlative degree of dead, okay? So, and other items, okay? You can look for those items that have, again, these constraints, okay? So you see, they do not share the same characteristics. Not because they are all adjectives, you can just call them as sharing the same characteristics. So as you can see here, there are some adjectives that meet the first criterion, some that only meet the second criterion, some that can only meet the first two, but not the last two, or so forth and so on, okay? Now I go to adverbial. So one of the most problematic items actually in the English language would be the adverbials, okay? In the old grammar classrooms, okay? From what I recall, when we talk about adverbials, they only talked about, the different types of adverbs, like adverb of time, adverb of manner, adverb of frequency, adverb of negation, and any other adverbs, okay? But there's more to adverbs than those types of adverbs. As a matter of fact, that's just one type of adverb, okay? So here, I'm not calling them adverbs, but because even the traditional definition of adverb is also problematic, like adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, and another adverbs, because adverbs are actually more than that, okay? Adverbs can also modify noun phrases, okay? They can also modify, pronouns, okay? Or even prepositions, okay? So let's get into that one. So the traditional definition of adverbs as only modifying verbs, adverbs, and adjectives and another adverb is actually very problematic, okay? So when we talk about adverbials, so these are the grammatical functions of adverbials, okay? But these are the terms of Quirk et al. Depending on who you are following, they probably have another term for that. But Quirk et al. Uses this labels. So we have adjuncts, we have subjuncts, we have disjuncts, and we have conjuncts, okay? As a matter of fact, adverbs are called the ragbag of the English language. When you say ragbag, if you don't know where to classify them, okay, they probably are adverbs. If there's one, like a part of a speech that do not share the same characteristics as others, that would be adverbials. I mean, for nouns, you know that they are names of, names of things, or for as long as they they refer to names, okay, of ideas, of places. They are easy to figure out, right away that they are nouns, right? Pronouns, for example, of course, that they just take the place of nouns. They are close class, right away that they are pronouns, right? For verbs, all the more, that describe action, blah, blah, blah. So at least they share that characteristic. Adjectives, when they appear before nouns, when they describe nouns, they must be adjectives. But for adverbs, they do not share characteristics, okay? They could be, the function of it, could be more than just modifying verbs and adverbs and adjectives, okay? So if you don't know how to classify them, okay, like you cannot tell whether it's preposition or is it conjunction or is it a verb or is it a noun, it must be an adverb, okay? If you have difficulty like figuring out what they are, it must be an adverb, okay? So here, I'm showing you just the semantic roles of adverb, the potential roles, the meaning, okay, in the English language. So they refer to space, okay, to the position, direction, or distance of space. These are adverbs. They refer to time, okay, the position, the duration, the frequency, the relationship. These are all adverbs. They refer to like processes, like the manner. So like the adverb of manner, that's just one of the many phases or functions or attributes of adverbs, okay, or the means or instrument or agentive. These are all under processes, okay? Even respect or contingency contingency, like the cause, the reason, the purpose, the result, the condition, the concession, all those items that talk about these ones, the cause, the reason, the purpose, they are all adverbials, okay? The modality, okay, if they emphasize, they approximate, they restrict, these are all adverbials. Or when they express degree, like amplification or diminution or the measure, these are all adverbials, okay? Much as I'd like to again discuss each one of them, due to time constraint, we cannot do that. But I'm just showing you that there's more to adverbials rather than just the usual adverb of time, manner, blah, blah, blah. The realization type of adverbials is also another problematic item in adverbs. That's why it's very confusing. Okay, so unlike adjectives, they are one word. For example, nouns, they end in these particular words, or verbs, no. But the forms, when you say realization types, the forms of adverbials, okay, is varied. One, they could be this one, the close class adverbs. These are adverb phrases like just then, okay, just, and then these are adverbs. She telephoned. Okay, look at this one. They are all adverbials or adverbs, but look at this one. When did she telephone? She telephoned just then. So here, this is an adverb. When did she telephone? Okay, another adverb phrase. She telephoned recently. So this one is an ly word. Ly adverbs are the easiest to identify. But here, telephone just then. So it's an adverb phrase. Okay, describes the time. When did she telephone? She telephoned last week. If you look at the structure, it's actually a noun phrase. Okay, like week is noun, and then the descriptor for week is last week. So it's a noun phrase. When did she telephone? She telephoned in the evening. So in the evening, okay, or prepositional phrase is actually the most dominant form of an adverbial. Okay, or she telephoned at nighttime. So that's prepositional phrase. Or you can also, the form could also be a verbless clause. When did she telephone? She telephoned though she's obviously ill. Or you can say, she telephoned though obviously ill. So if you look at the obviously ill, the subject and the verb are missing. You don't have to say she telephoned though she is obviously ill, because it's already understood that you're referring to the she here. She telephoned although she is obviously ill. So you can drop the subject and you can also drop the verb, and you can just say she telephoned though obviously ill. So that's a verbless clause. You can also use a non-finite clause. When did she telephone? She telephoned while waiting for the car. That was the time when she telephoned. So if you look at the structure, okay, so it's a non-finite clause, while waiting for the car. Or again, you can also use a finite clause. When did she telephone? She telephoned after she had seen the announcement. Okay, so here, if you look at the structure, it's a finite clause. Okay. Interestingly here, one of my PhD mentees look at the structure of adjuncts in Philippine English. Okay, and this is what she found out, that of the many structures of Philippine English, or the realization types of adjuncts in Philippine English, the most dominant would be the prepositional phrase. Okay, not the single adverb. Okay, I mean that's what we, I mean, in elementary, that's what we are explicitly taught, right? These are adverbs, like the ly adverbs or single word adverbs. But in the dissertation of Morales or Mendoza, it's supposed to be Morales, not Mendoza. Okay, she found out that the most common would be prepositional phrase, just like what I showed you a while ago. And then the next most popular realization type of adjuncts would be finite clauses. Okay, and look at the difference. Okay, single adverb fares very low, and then we also have adverb phrase. We also have noun phrases. We have non-finite clauses. We have verbless clauses. We have prepositional clauses, and so forth and so on. Okay. So here I was just, I'm not so sure if you have heard of the term subjuncts, but they are not usually, again, taught explicitly in ordinary English language classrooms. Okay, but we have what we call subjuncts. So we have, courtesy subjuncts or viewpoint subjuncts, and these are also subjects. The emphasizers, the intensifiers, the item emphasizers, they are subjuncts. Okay, an example of like, very, okay, those are all intensifiers. Okay, anything that intensifies, they are called subjuncts. Okay, I'm showing you here like courtesy. For the longest time, I don't know how they are subsumed in the English language grammar, but they are called subjuncts, or they are under the grammatical functions of adverbials called subjuncts. Okay. So we have the wide orientation and the narrow orientation. Okay, so I'll just give you an example of the courtesy subjuncts, just to show you. I mean, just to show you how, how not really confusing. Okay, how extensive they could get. Okay, these are examples of courtesy subjects like kindly, please, graciously, cordially, or humbly. Okay, now there are instances where they can be used in imperatives, for example. It also shows here, okay, the position in the sentence, that they can actually position in the initial. They can also be in the end medial or the initial end, and so forth and so on. Okay, it also shows the person, or when they can occur in the passive or a separate tone, and so forth and so on, like graciously accept this gift from us, or kindly leave the room, but never can you say leave the room kindly. Okay, so you say please leave the room, but you can also say leave the room please. Okay, but never don't please leave the room. Again, that's problematic. Okay, you can also say write on this form please your whole address. Okay, you can say, will you kindly take a seat, or will passengers kindly refrain from smoking? You can also say, may we cordially invite you to the ball, or may I humbly offer my apologies. Okay, may I please explain my reasons? Passengers are kindly requested. They appear in the passive. Okay, but you cannot say passengers are please requested by the authorities. Okay, kindly be quiet is okay. Be quiet please is okay. But you cannot say very kindly offer me a seat. He very kindly offered me a seat is okay, but not as imperative, like very kindly offer me a seat, or will you very kindly take a seat? That's not also possible. Okay. So we have already the adjuncts, we have subjuncts. Now I'm discussing disjuncts. Okay. In 2011, I published something on disjuncts in Philippine English. When you say disjuncts, these are evaluation or contemplation or respect or authority from the speaker. When you are you're about to say something, okay, we usually say, evaluate the proposition or the sentence that we are going to say next. So these are the disjuncts. For example, if you are going to say something that is unfortunate, okay, we say unfortunately, instead of just saying you did not make it to the cutoff. Then we usually say since the sentence, you did not make it to the cutoff, is something that is unfortunate. Then we say, unfortunately, you did not make it to the cutoff. So the unfortunately is what we call the disjuncts, okay? Or sometimes when we are, obviously, when you think that something is obvious, okay? He doesn't like you. So instead of, blatantly saying, he doesn't like you, we say, obviously, just to highlight that what you're going to say next is something that's obvious. Obviously, he doesn't like you. Or if we are going to say something that's basic, we usually say, basically. Okay, so those are what we call disjuncts, or, actually, or seriously, and blah, blah, blah. So those are what we call disjuncts. So I investigated the disjuncts in Philippine English, and I discovered that they can function as something else aside from just being disjuncts. Like, they can be cohesive markers, they could be doubt markers, they can express actuality or of reality marker, they can be intensifier, they can be mitigator or discourse filler. Okay, I'm just showing you here examples. Okay, these are the most popular disjuncts in Philippine English, like actually. I don't know if you're very fond of actually as well, but in the Philippines, we're very fun, actually, when you say something, actually, I went to the market and then actually, okay, so every time they say something, they, use the word actually to express that, okay? Like, the next one is we also have like hopefully, apparently, but what is interesting here is that, as you can see, there are more occurrences of unfortunately than fortunately, okay? It appears that when we are saying something unfortunate, we would say like, unfortunately, we would announce that. But if we are going to say something that's fortunate, we just say, okay, you passed the exams, okay? Or you receive a gift, okay? And we do not anymore, announce that one as something that is fortunate. Okay, I also discovered that there are other forms of disjuncts aside from the single word disjuncts. There are also phrasal disjuncts, like in fairness, in all honesty, in short, in fact, as a matter of fact. Okay, if you are trying to emphasize something, as a matter of fact, she is the number one contender, okay, of the role. So, and then you say something, okay, or to be frank, at least to tell you frankly, for all we know, blah, blah, blah. And then we also have clausal disjuncts. Yeah, you use actually a lot, right? Okay, I think, I guess, I believe, I bet, I suppose, who knows? Okay, as you can see here, every time that we say something, especially if we are not very sure, we are very fond of making claims, but that we are not sure of. They say, they've broken up already. Okay, but that's unverified. And you say, I think they've broken up already, or I guess they have broken up already, or I believe they have broken up already. I suppose they have broken up already. Okay, so you see, we accompany our claims with these expressions. These are what we call disjuncts. Okay. And then I also extended my study, and then I look at the disjuncts in world Englishes just to compare. And I noticed that there are some, countries or varieties that are very fond of, actually, Hong Kong and Singapore are one of them. They actually have more actuallys than Philippines. I thought that Philippines is very fond of using actually, but I figured that Hong Kong and Singapore have more occurrences of actually in their spoken text. But surprisingly, and this is something that I didn't also expect. Okay, Australia, for example, very few occurrences of actually, or Ireland, for example, very few occurrences of actually. Okay, Jamaica, for instance, look at that one. There are more occurrences of basically than actually. You see that? Okay, there's some people who could love using the word basically, when they start their sentence, basically this is the. Even if they're not saying that anything that's basic, they would use the expression basically, or even, the actually, even if they're not saying something in actuality, they would say actually, and then they say a word. Okay. Which one of these expressions are you familiar with, or do you usually use also? Are you the basically type of person or the actually type of person? Okay. I'm showing you here the other functions of disjuncts in Philippine English. As you can see, these are instances where it shows that, actually, Yeah, me too. I overuse actually, or even basically. Okay, now I notice that I'm very fond of using apparently. You know, like apparently. You know, if you say something and then you are not very sure of the apparently, they're leaving soon, but you know that's unverified. They say apparently. She didn't like that. Or and since I've not verified that one, say apparently she didn't like that. Okay, and so forth and so on. Here I'm showing you that in Philippine English, okay, the disjuncts, okay, the disjuncts, okay, are used as discourse filler, like as you can see here. Okay, there, you know, it's basically the fact that, okay, the sentence starts here. You have freedom of speech. Okay, but before saying you have freedom of speech, as you can see, there are, you know, expressions like there, you know, it's basically the fact that, okay. Here is another example. One thing that we're trying to do now, actually, in fact, it seems, okay, so all these expressions, they don't mean anything yet. The real sentence, okay, has not been uttered, okay, and the start is actually in here, okay. My interpretation, before saying that, my interpretation of this lecture, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you see, we have the tendency to be like that. Another one, like, I guess I know, but I think I forgot. The utterance actually here is that I know I forgot, but you know, without the disjuncts, it's kind of rude, right? I know I forgot. Okay, but you know, we just don't say I know I forgot. So we try to mitigate, okay, the sentence by saying I guess I know. It appears like we're not very sure of that, but I think I forgot. So you see, now it softens, okay. Now it softens, okay, instead of saying I know I forgot, okay. So it serves as a mitigating device. Another mentee of mine, Ariane Borlongan, also investigated the conjuncts or the linking adverbials in world Englishes. So that's like the fourth grammatical function of adverbials as conjuncts. When you say conjuncts, these are the items that link linguistic items. Okay, so we have listing, summative, appositive, resultive, contrastive, inferential, transitional, or these are probably in some resources they're called the cohesive markers or the transitional phrases and so forth and so on. They are actually very, very important in writing. Okay, some misuse or overuse conjuncts in sentences. Okay, for example, in the Philippines, we use the in the first place or first of all, not to enumerate, not to mention listing. So for example, you say, in the first place, milk is blah blah. In the second place, milk is da da da. So you use the in the first place when you are listing, right? Okay, so there's in the first place, there's in the second place, there's in the third place, and so forth and so on. But in the Philippines, they say in the first place to make a point or to emphasize something, like in the first place, I did not invite you. Okay, so and then there's no more in the second place. Okay, or they would usually say, like, they are used as like subordinate conjuncts, like first of all, okay, I did not invite myself. Okay, so as you know, first of all should be used when you are enumerating something, like first of all, second of all, third of all. But in the Philippines, they use first of all, okay, to make a point. Again, like, first of all, let me just make myself clear. First of all, I did not invite myself here, and then go on with the sentence. But there's no mention of second of all or third of all at all. Okay, so that's the fourth grammatical function of adverbial. So what I'm trying to say here is that when we get to adverbs in our lessons, okay, we should not only be describing or mentioning or teaching explicitly all about adverb of time, manner, or adverb of frequency, or adverb of negation, because there's more to adverbs than just those. Those are just adjuncts. So we have, I showed you subjuncts, I showed you disjuncts, and here I'm showing you conjuncts. So those are the four grammatical functions of adverbials. Okay. So here, this is what Brilco has discovered in the linking adverbials used in World Englishes. Okay, so this is a comparison in academic, prose, news, fiction, and conversation of here 7 corpora of World Englishes. Here, for example, in the East Africa, okay, the conjuncts are actually used in academic prose. Okay, very consistently Hong Kong academic prose as well. Okay, they are also very popular in conversation, okay, and so forth and so on. But in Jamaica, in Nigeria, for example, there are not too many, for example, conjuncts as can be seen, as can be deduced by the bar graph in here. Now I go to prepositions. Okay, so I'm done with adverbials. Okay. Oh, good to know. So we have also, I mean, do you use like in the first place, first of all, if you are trying to emphasize an opinion, but not as listing, okay? Because in the American English or British English, they use first of all, or in the first place, okay, for enumeration. In the first place, and then there's in the second place, and there's in the third place, okay, or first of all, or second of all, or third of all. Now I go to preposition. What I've so far notice, and probably this is true to your case also in Ghana, the teaching of preposition is usually at the end, okay, of the school year, okay, and at times they only highlight few prepositions. What I've seen so far is that they only teach, for example, the differences between in, on, and at, okay, and that's it. Okay, there are many problematic items when it comes to prepositions, but what is usually highlighted will just be the differences or the distinctions between and among in, on, and at. Okay, I'm showing you here that there's more to prepositions. Okay, for instance, we have monosyllabic prepositions like this one. These are all the monosyllabic prepositions. We also have polysyllabic prepositions, and there are a lot of them, notwithstanding, Okay, we also have marginal prepositions, meaning there are some items, okay, that are that can function either as verb or as conjunction. Like, for example, granted, okay, or following, or considering, or excluding, okay. They are, for example, granted that you are not coming here, okay, or things like following his resignation, okay, following the, for example, following the command of the blah, blah, blah. So you see, it could actually be a preposition. It could also be a conjunction. It could also be a verb for that matter, okay? We also have complex prepositions, okay, as you can see here. So we have 2-word sequences. Okay, so we have up against, as per, apart from, exclusive of, for example, owing to, okay, instead of. These are all complex prepositions, okay? These are 2-word sequences, but we also have 3-word sequences, okay? For example, here we have the in, noun, of combination, like in aid of, in case of, in consequence of, in charge of, in behalf of, in view of. We also have in, noun, with combination, like in accordance with, in common with, in compliance with, in conformity with, in line with, in composition, in comparison with. We also have by, noun, of combination, okay, like by dint of, by virtue of, by means of, by way of. Or we also have on, noun, of combination, like on account of, on behalf of. So these are actually the combinations. Again, they're not usually taught explicitly in classrooms, as though these combinations do not exist, as though these complex prepositions do not exist, but they do. You probably would encounter them, especially in formal essays, or in research articles, or in academic writing, okay, or in memoranda, in reports, okay. They make use extensively of complex prepositions in those kinds of articles, okay. I'm showing you here that prepositions could be problematic, especially in the case of Philippines, okay? We tend to use the non-standard preposition, okay? Here, the standard is based on, but in the Philippines, we say based from, Okay. Another one is that the standard is result in, but in the Philippines we say result to. Okay. There you go. Okay. Here I'm showing you, for example, that here the based on is the standard one. Okay, as you can see here, and then we also have based from. Okay, and then the result in, and then the result to. Okay. Okay, but here in the Philippines, we have the tendency to use based from instead of based on. Okay, I'm showing here from the globe. Okay, based on, for example, everyone uses based on. Okay, see, everyone. But in the Philippines, we have the tendency to say based from. I can say that in Ghana, well, there are occurrences of that, but not as, as like, I mean, like, how we use it in the Philippines. As you can see, we have like 101 occurrences of based from in the Philippines. The reason for that is that in the Philippines, we have very simple prepositional system. Okay, we only have nang and sa, 2 items for prepositions. And so the tendency is to, I mean, we get confused with what prepositions goes with a particular verb. Okay, so we attach from instead of on. We say based from, or we say result to instead of result in. We say bound to instead of bound for. Okay, those are just examples. Okay. As you can see here, the based on and from in globe B. Okay, that's what I just showed, right? Okay. Now, what I'm showing here is that instead of teaching, for example, the prepositions like that, okay, a good way of teaching prepositions is to teach multi-word verbs, okay, because there are certain prepositions that go along with certain verbs. And so we have what we call the phrasal verb, we have prepositional verb, and we also have the phrasal prepositional verbs. Okay, so phrasal verbs are those that, verb and adverb. Okay, these are the verbs that actually have a one-word equivalent, like touchdown, okay, landed, like set up, construct. Okay, so these are phrasal verb. Okay, but there are also prepositional verbs, meaning that there are certain verbs that when you use them, you have to use a preposition. Okay, you cannot use them without preposition, or there are certain prepositions that go with certain verbs. For example, when you say invested, every time you say the word invested or the verb invested, you have to, of course, use the preposition in. Like he invested in property, you cannot say he invested property. You cannot say he invested for property, or you cannot say he invested to property. So the preposition that goes with the verb invested would be in. Okay, like he invested in property, or he invested his money in property. So those are prepositional verb. Okay, meaning that there are certain prepositions that go with certain verbs. Okay, now there are also cases of phrasal prepositional verbs, meaning that these are phrasal verbs, and again there are certain prepositions that go with them. Okay, and a very good example of this one would be look forward. So look forward is the phrasal verb, right? But what goes with it, okay, would be the preposition in. So you cannot say look forward, I mean to, I said. You cannot say look forward in. You can only say look forward to. Let's say, I look forward to the party. I look forward to meeting you soon. I look forward to listening to your talk. Okay? So only to can be added to the phrasal verb look forward. Only the preposition to can be added to the phrasal verb look forward. See, now if that's not taught explicitly, so the tendency is, people saying, I look forward in your lecture, I look forward by, and so forth and so on. And there's no combination like that. Okay, so it has to be, they are, some prepositions should be taught, okay, as collocates of certain structures. So that's what I'm showing you now. Okay, again, this kind of lesson is never taught explicitly in English language classrooms. Okay, but these structures are actually, they exist, they are there. I don't know why they are not taught explicitly. So I recall when I was teaching all about multi-word verbs to my these are MA already and PhD, and they claim that we have not actually encountered the expression multi-word verb, that there are, we didn't even know that there are actually prepositional verbs or phrasal prepositional verbs. They've heard of phrasal verbs. Okay, it's like just a verb and another small item that's called phrasal verb. Okay, there are phrasal verb. When you say phrasal verb, these are the combination of verb and an adverb. Okay, and you know, there's a one word equivalent of that one. Okay, those are phrasal verb. Okay, like I'll set up. Okay, give in. Okay, I'll give up. So those are phrasal verb. Wait, I'm not. I will not be. The Infinix, there's someone like Infinix hot template. I'm not accepting that one because I do not trust the name. Okay, so anyway, here, so we have the multi-word verbs. Okay, so I have one mentee that actually investigated the multi-word verbs in world Englishes. So if you have not encountered this one, so Quirk et al. Provides actually a list of the phrasal verbs, the prepositional verbs, and the phrasal prepositional verbs. Okay, so the good thing about this one is that you will never be confused with what prepositions come with these particular structures, like here. So give something to, like go through, okay, look at, okay, obtain something from, okay, or like hold on to, keep up with, look out for, turn away from, turn back to, come up with, get back to, get away with. How to get away with murder, you know, those things, come out of, okay, I'm coming, like, end up with, okay. So these are the expressions. So if prepositions are not taught this way, like what they appear with or what they are collocated with all the time, then that it becomes really confusing, especially for languages that have very simple prepositional system, just like Philippine languages. We only have 2 prepositions, so I cannot imagine, you know, mastering all these many prepositional words in English. Okay, so here I'm showing you that one of my mentees, Jennifer Ella, in 2019 investigated the use of multi-word verbs in world Englishes. Here, she investigated in Australian English, blah blah blah, and so forth and so on. And this is like these are the number of occurrences of the phrasal verbs, prepositional verbs, and the phrasal prepositional verbs. Okay, and as you can see, it's the inner circle Englishes that make use of a lot of these items. Okay, that means again that it could be a mark of very high English language proficiency if you know how to play with all these phrasal verbs, prepositional verbs, and phrasal prepositional verbs. So all the more that we have to teach them explicitly, because that actually could be a mark of high English language proficiency. Okay. Okay. One of my mentees, okay, she's an MA, investigated the multi-word verbs in senior high school academic papers, okay, and noticed that, you know, and these are, you know, there are a lot of multi-word verbs actually that they use in the academic papers. Okay, we just wanted to prove that they actually exist in the lingo of students. They exist in the textbook. They exist in all academic outputs that they do. How come they are not taught explicitly? And these are like the number of frequency, okay, of these multi-word verbs in senior high school academic papers. Okay, and what is exciting here is that there are actually innovations, and we call this one innovations because they tend to, you know, deviate from the prescribed multi-word verb, okay? And that is the effect of not teaching them explicitly in classrooms. So instead of result in, we saw result to with 187 occurrences, and these are academic outputs of students. Okay, so instead of based on, we say based from in the Philippines. Instead of cope with, we've seen instances of cope up with. And this is not just 1 or 2 or 3 occurrences, as you can see here. So instead of spend on, we say spend in. Or say set up, we saw this one. Or based on, we say based in. Or make up, or come up with, we say come up to. Or make up with, we say make up to. Or come to, we say come on. And so forth and so on. So I look at the now corpus, okay, and, you know, check the occurrences of result to. because it should be result in. Okay. Oh, so as you can see, Philippines has the most number of occurrences of result to when it should be result in. Okay. I can say that in Nigeria, there are, that's like second runner up to the Philippines is Nigeria. They also say result to apparently instead of result in. Okay. So cope up, for example, is the prescribed one, but cope with is the prescribed one, but in the Philippines we say cope up with. Okay, and then I noticed that in the globe, it's not just the Philippines actually that use the term cope up with. Okay. In Ghana, there are only very few occurrences in Ghana, but in India, they also say cope up with, when it should only be cope with. Okay, as you can see in the inner circle Englishes, negligible occurrences of cope up with. If they're probably not even from the native speakers, but in India, for example, and Bangladesh, okay, and here Philippines, as you can see, there are notable uses of cope up with, which is something that is far from the prescribed one. Okay, so what I've shown you so far, that the trend is the English grammar is changing. Okay, and that there are a lot of books that actually discuss the many changes happening in English grammar. What I'm going to show next would be what we should be discussing as English teachers. Okay, that there are actually some changes in the English grammar. For example, here it shows here that as early as 1990 to 1994, there have been, a lot of usage of the singular there, meaning that if you have the indefinite pronoun as the antecedent, like everyone, everybody, okay, then you don't have to use his or her or his, okay, as evident here. So you can actually use the plural there, even if the antecedent is singular. So you can say everyone or everybody has their own opinion, instead of saying everyone has his or her opinion. Okay, now that's also, recently, especially that APA 7 already sanctioned that one. Okay, but in the 1990s, okay, until probably, especially in the 1990s, we are very afraid to use the singular there, when it is actually perfectly okay to use singular there, or using there to refer to singular antecedent. Okay, so if we have another bar here that's about probably 2015 and onwards, then all the more that there are uses of the singular they. Okay, recently too, and that's again, I'm now talking about the recent, the trends or the changes in the English grammar. We have seen the nouning of verbs and the verbing of nouns. Okay, at least in the Philippines, that's very widespread. Okay, and in other varieties of English as well, we have seen a lot of those. Okay, here are examples of nouning of verbs. There are verbs, but they are used as nouns. Like there are new its, alo maginhawa. We don't even have to say there are new restaurants or new places to eat. The verb eat is now used as noun. There are new eats, alo maginhawa. Again, then you look at the corpus, okay, to find out how widespread is the use of it as a noun and not just a verb. Or we export our produce, you don't have to say products. Okay, here we have also seen verbing of nouns, and this is more dominant than the nouning of verbs actually. Like Fat Amy in the Pitch Perfect 2, you've seen that one, said I'm soloing here. So you don't have to say I'm giving a solo performance here. You say soloing here, or we are holidaying in Bangkok, or we are goodbying again, or come over here, we're breakfasting, or we're picnicking, or we're isnacking, okay, or we're kayaking, or those are all nouns, but you just add ing to them, and they can now be used as verbs, and that has been the trend. Okay, we also say eatery in the Philippines, eatery, but we have seen a lot of uses of eats instead of eatery, or restaurants. So instead of saying eateries or restaurants, we just say eats. Are there new eats in your places, meaning places to eat, or just say eats? Okay, so that's a verb, but it's used as noun. Here, I'm showing you, I mean, if you're a big fan of, for example, this is the Big Bang Theory. Penny said, okay, I'm waitressing at the Cheesecake Factory. So this is a classic example of the verbing of noun. Okay, it's a noun, waitress, but it's used as a verb. Okay, like I'm waitressing at the Cheesecake Factory. This is a scene from, I don't know if you've watched Pitch Perfect 2. This is Fat Amy saying, hey, I'm soloing here. What are you doing? I'm soloing here. Okay, I mean, we used to be very afraid to say soloing. We say we render a solo number, okay, or they are giving a solo number or a duet number. But it's perfectly to say we are duetting or we are soloing. So again, it's a noun, but it's used as a verb. It's the verbing of nouns, okay? I've also seen here, just, again, this is another case of nouning of verb, okay? This is coming from Prison Break, season 5, okay? So here you can see I have an ask, one that's imperative. So instead of saying I have a question, so again the verb ask is used as a noun. I have an ask, okay, which is perfectly okay. Or this one is in Suits season 8, okay, I know it is a big ask, okay. Again, it's supposed to be a verb, but it's used as a noun, okay. The trend actually is that you can use a verb, any word can be verbed, as you can see here. Okay, here, this is taken from How I Met Your Mother. Okay, I love that series, How I Met Your Mother. It's on Netflix if you have not seen it. So it says here, you right now'd, Scooter. Right now is an adverbial phrase, right? But like, I want to see you right now. So that's an adverbial phrase. But here, the right now is, is treated as a verb in the past form with the addition of ed. You right now the Scooter, like you said right now the Scooter, and you said you right now the Scooter. Or like, on Facebook, you say, Shirley had your story. Okay, so if you like click the haha emoji, and so the notification says, Shirley had your story. Haha is supposed to be, how do you even classify haha? Okay, like an interjection. Now it's used as a verb. Okay, haha, your story, or wowed your story. Okay. Here, as you can see, again, you can turn any word into an adjective. Just add a y to it, and it becomes now an adjective. Like, you two were too happy, it ends with y, or too shiny, it ends in y, or too nicknamey. There's no word as nicknamey here, but if you're very fond of using nicknames to each other, then you are too nicknamey. Again, you can make a word function as something else, okay, anytime. So as seen here, these are just some screenshots that I'm showing you here, okay. Yeah, we are partying and so on and so on, okay. The nouning of verbs. So that is the trend, nouning of verbs and the verbing of nouns, okay. Another trend, I don't know if you have also noticed recently, is that in English grammar we are taught how to arrange the series of adjectives that go with nouns, right? We even use mnemonics for that. So if you have, for example, an adjective that refers to to the size or color, or to nominal adjective, or to number, blah blah blah, so there's a like sequence, okay. But actually speakers of English are not very conscious of how adjectives should be arranged before a noun, because they make use of complex modifier. Here I'm showing you an example, and I got this one from Gilmore Girls. Okay, it's showing now on Netflix. It has 7 seasons. I'm a big fan of it. Okay, this is Lorelai saying, and I'll play.
You could really be a family in the stupid traditional Dan Quayle golden retriever, grow old together, wear matching jogging suits kind of way.
Did you see that? Okay, he even has a difficulty like breathing, because there are so many adjectives before that. How she described the kind of family that they have. Okay, but if you look at the modifiers, they're not the usual modifiers. Okay, the usual adjectives with the adjective forming suffix at the end. So you can actually use any adjective for that matter. It could be long sentences modifiers. It could be a noun modifiers. It could be whatever combination kind of modifier, for as long as you put them before the noun. Okay, I'll play that one again, which is very interesting. If you watch Gilmore Girls or any show for that matter, you notice that this is how speakers will now make use of adjectives. Okay,
could really be a family in the stupid traditional Dan Quayle golden retriever grow old together, wear matching jogging suits kind of way.
Okay, so there again, still coming from
Could really be a
sorry. This is also coming from the Gilmore Girls, and this is Emily. This is also how he described, for example, a particular line. So, for example, girls always go to the bathroom together line. So instead of just saying, so this is, for example, this is the blue line, this is the girls line, this is the, first year line. Okay, so this is how, for example, the line was described. Girls always go to the bathroom together line. So you see, that's how actually speakers already make use of adjectives. Okay, so again, as English teachers, we just have to notice the changes happening in the language. Okay, and this one I'm getting screenshots from the shows that I watch usually. And if you watch, a series on Netflix or whatever you are watching, be be very observant of the changes happening in the language. Okay, for example, okay, in the Old English we say she's very pretty. Again, the intensifier usually appears before the adjective, right? She's so pretty. Okay, she's very pretty. She's so pretty. So the intensifier appears before the adjective that it intensifies, right? But if you notice now how people intensify adjectives, they use a common intensifier, and that is AF. I'm pretty sure you know what an AF stands for. Like, oh, she's cool AF. Oh, she's pretty AF. It's hard AF. It's anything, okay? So whatever they want to intensify, they use AF. And if you look at the structure, the AF does not appear before the adjective that it modifies anymore, but it becomes post-adjectival, okay? The AF as what's this as an intensifier for all becomes now generic intensifier, now appears after the adjective it modifies and not before it. Okay, and what does an AF mean? Okay, so here is as an example, like I'm worthy AF, I'm intelligent AF, I'm magic AF, I'm fun AF, creative, and so forth and so on. I'm sure you have already heard this one in many conversations, especially in English films or in English series. Okay, so those are just some of the many changes happening in the English language that I have so far discussed. It's already 7:15, which means I've been talking for more than 2 hours already. There's so much actually to discuss, okay, all about English grammar. I really want to say more, but due to time constraints, okay, I'd like to do the wrap up now of my talk at 7:15. So again, when does an error become a feature of whatever English that is, like Philippine English, Ghanaian English, Singaporean English, or British English, and so forth and so on. Okay, AF means I've shown you already, right? So this is what AF means. Okay, it becomes the generic intensifier. Okay, and I don't want to read it and I don't want to say it. Okay, but it's you can Google it, and it's how English speakers would intensify their adjectives. Okay, so here, when do errors cease to be errors and become part of the standard? So the answer to that one, what Gonzalez actually posed in 1985, is that if enough educated elite in the society commit these supposedly errors, then these errors in effect have been accepted by society as the standard. And okay, we do not even call them anymore errors or mistake. Okay, so from mistake or errors, we treat them as deviations from a particular norm. For example, deviation from either deviation from American English norm or deviation from British English norm, but we treat them now more as an innovation. Okay, all these changes happening, please do not call them mistakes or errors. We don't even call them deviations. We call them as innovations, because that's what we do with the language. Okay, it's implanted in our culture, and then we innovate them depending on a lot of factors. Okay, it could be about the language or just the culture in our society. So that's how we treat the supposed error or mistake that was once that's what others would look at. Okay, so when do we say that an error becomes a feature of a particular variety of English. So these are what D'Souza said, like, is it widespread? Okay, like, I mean, widespread, meaning a lot of users of English actually use it. Okay, for example, like in the beginning, we cannot accept the word anyways, right? Because anyway is supposed to be a conjunction, and you cannot put an S to anyways. Okay, you cannot pluralize it, or there's no way that you can put an S to anyway, right? Until everyone already says anyways, okay, to mean, you know, if you are shifting from one topic to another. So anyways, and then we hear even the native speakers, we hear even the scholars, even the linguists themselves, okay, use anyways. So that's like, it's so widespread, okay? Is it systematic or is it rule governed? Now, for example, you know, that's what the common rule should apply, okay? We cannot have wrong English, okay? I'll get to that one. Yeah, these are all innovations. Again, okay, I'll get to that one later on. So is it used by competent users in formal situations? So again, if these are, you know, the instances, okay, if the answer to all these questions is yes, then the usage must be seen as part of the standard, regardless of conscious acceptance or rejection. Okay, you don't need someone to accept that one or reject that one, for as long as it becomes, you know, it's widespread, it's systematic, okay, and it's used by competent users even in formal situations. Then we don't treat that one anymore as an error or mistake, but it's an innovation of that particular variety. So there are 4 criteria to qualify as this is NVE or new variety of English, and Philippines is one of the new varieties of English, and I'm probably Ghanaian English is also going there. I'm not so sure of the status in Ghana, but Philippines is considered as a new variety of English. So and I think Ghana and Philippines have the same like roots. I mean, like history. It's just that our colonizers are the Americans, while colonizers of Ghana would be British. Okay, so your English there is influenced by the British English, while our English in the Philippines is influenced by American English. So these are the 4 criteria. It has developed through the educational system. Okay, like it's taught as a subject and it's used as the medium of instruction. So it has developed in an area where a native variety of English was not the language spoken by most of the population. So that's our situation. It is used for a range of functions among those who speak or write it in the region where it is used, like letter writing, of literature, the lingua franca, or, you know, just in our conversation or in whatever function that is. It has become localized or nativized by adopting some language features of its own. And that's what we did with our English. So you see, I've shown you in the beginning that there are some structures that are only known to Ghanaian English speakers, and there are some structures that are only known to Philippine English speakers. So that's what we did with that. We localize it, or we nativize English, okay? So I'm also showing you here not to stop spreading posts that saying common errors in the English language, okay? So I'm showing you here that, you know, there are on Facebook, this is very rampant. There are a lot of people, you know, look at the number of shares, okay? We don't treat them as errors. We don't, okay? They are, as I showed you earlier, so they are like probably mistake or errors in the beginning, but you can treat them as deviations. But even the word deviation, it means that there is a standard norm. So you can say deviation from American English norm or deviation from Australian English norm, but we should call them as innovation. Actually, we innovate these items, okay? So just some thoughts to ponder on before I end. You know, the English language will continuously evolve as it should, and there's nothing we can do about it. We English teachers are not the gatekeepers of the English language. We do not gatekeep, okay? The English language will change, will evolve as it should, okay? So we do not determine, English teachers, which ones are acceptable or which ones are grammatical or ungrammatical. We do not gatekeep. That's not our job. So we should stop prescribing how the English language should be used or spoken. Okay, instead, we should empower the speakers of English by recognizing their own variety. Okay, if in doubt, again, conduct empirical studies, that is, conduct corpus-based studies. I've shown you, that they actually exist in corpus. That means speakers, actually speakers of the language, actually use it. Now, as for the trajectories or future directions of the English language teaching, I'm sure you have heard already of this one. Okay, in Ghana, you probably are already using this one, the Common European Framework of Reference. Okay, or the CFER, and there are certain, structures, okay, that should be mastered. Okay, if you are to call yourself, for example, I mean, when you apply for to other countries, or I mean, if you talk about your English, okay, like if you take the TOEIC or TOEFL or anything like that, okay, so these are the symbols. So what's your level? Okay, are you, oh my God, the English level is A2, or she got B1 English. Okay, so we should all aim for like at least C1 or C2. So here in the levels of this English, there are certain structures of grammar that you have to master to be able to, be called in this level already. Okay, everyone is talking about this CEFR. I'm sure in Ghana you have heard already this one. So this is the CEFR, or this is the Common European Framework of Reference. So there are many aspects of that. So like the functions, and as you can see here, the second one, that's the biggest, like the grammar, the discourse markers, vocabulary, and topics that should be mastered for it to be called in this level, for example. Okay, so I'm just showing you about that grammar. Okay, like so this is for A1, A2, B1, B2, and C1, and so forth and so on. Okay, so for example here, just showing you like modals. Okay, here modals and modals, they are everywhere. Okay, here phrasal verbs, as you can see, again modals and passive, here phrasal verbs again, and passive forms, and so forth and so on. So you see there are certain structures that you need to master so that you achieve a certain English language proficiency. Okay, and so we have to again go back to the teaching of grammar, and we have to teach some items that are not taught explicitly in the traditional English language classrooms. Again, we as teachers, without them, we wouldn't know how to read, write, or correct everyone else's grammar. And with this, it's 7:24. I'd like to end my lecture. I hope that you got something from, oh, that's long. Okay. Whew. So there you go. Thank you all for listening. I don't know if you still there. You still with me?
Yes, we are. Professor.
There you go. Wow. It's 7:25. Means that I have spoken for more than 2 hours.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay.
An insightful presentation. Wow.
Okay. So I don't know if you have questions or whatever. Oh, okay. Let me just breathe. Let me just catch my breath because I spoke for more than 2 hours. Okay. There you go. You probably have, I mean, if you are okay, I mean, if you still have time, we can entertain a few questions probably. Yeah. You can type your questions, okay, in the interest of time. Okay. So we can have the open forum. Go ahead. What I actually discussed today is, it's one course in masters, okay, but I had to simplify it for you guys, okay. Let me share in the chat group the link I was telling you about of the Holy Trinity. I call it the trilogy in grammar. The trilogy in grammar and corpus linguistics, something that the resource that all English teachers should have. Okay, I'll put the link in the G Drive. Meanwhile, so if you have questions, you can go ahead and ask me questions. Okay. I'm looking for that. Where is it? E-library. What
Hey, Dr.
happened?
Shirley, there is a question from one of our participants. It says, can we have wrong English since every mistake is now an innovation?
We cannot have, there's no wrong English. Okay, please. Okay, I think in many seminars, webinars that I've been discussing, okay, I usually talk about the varieties of English. Okay, so we have Philippine English, we have Ghanaian English, there's British English, there's American English, there's Australian English, there's Singaporean English, and so forth and so on. All these Englishes are legitimate varieties of English. Okay, so we cannot say that there's one more correct English or more correct English than the other, if that's what you mean. Okay. What I showed you is, for example, the many changes happening in the English grammar, right? Okay. And if you look at, according to Corpus investigations, the changes happening actually in the English grammar would be initiated mostly by the native speakers of English. Okay. And it's only the non-native speakers of English who would imitate the native speakers in the changes that they do with their own language. Okay. So yeah, there are many changes happening in the English language. So there's no way that you can say, there's no such word as that your English is wrong, your English is incorrect. It could be incorrect in probably for that particular variety, but elsewhere that's perfectly okay. For example, I'll give you a good example. In some varieties, they cannot accept the double negatives, right? Especially for the traditional English speakers, they cannot accept the double negatives. They think that the double negative is incorrect. Okay, like double negative, like I never done or something like that. But in Black English, for example, in other Englishes, okay, the double negative is perfectly okay, is perfectly acceptable. Okay, so again, you cannot say that a particular structure is incorrect because it could be, you are probably not familiar with it, but in other varieties of English, that is perfectly acceptable. I'm actually looking for the link of the book that I promised you. So go ahead and ask me questions while I'm looking at my G Drive, okay? You can ask me more questions if you wish. Hello? It's okay to ask me more questions. Okay, I'm just looking for the... Okay. How come my e-library is missing? My e-library, there you go. Now I found it, my e-library. Okay, I'm showing you now. So this is the trilogy. I call it, where is that one? The Trinity, I call it the Trinity. Okay, I'm getting the link and I'm giving it to link copied. I'm posting it here. There you go. What's the difference between prepositional verb and phrasal verb? I think I have already discussed that one a while ago. Phrasal verb is when you have a word, a verb and an adverb at the end. Okay, so it's a two-word combination, and the equivalent of it is usually you have a one-word equivalent of that. Okay, for example, give up, surrender. So that's a phrasal verb. Okay, or what else? Set up, construct. That's a phrasal verb. Touchdown. Okay, that's a verb and then an adverb. There's a one-word equivalent of that. Those are the phrasal verb. Prepositional verb, on the other hand, is that there are certain verbs that require a certain verb, a certain preposition. That's why it's called prepositional verb. For example, let's say dawned on me. For example, it just dawned on me. Okay, so you cannot say it just dawned at me. You cannot say that, or it just dawned to me. You cannot say that one. If you use the term dawned, so it just dawned on me that you are cutting classes, okay? Or I am interested. The verb is interested. So what preposition comes after the verb interested? You cannot say I am interested to you, never, okay? You cannot say I am interested of you. Okay, so if you use the verb interested, the preposition that goes with it is always in. I am interested in what you are saying. I am interested in partaking. Okay, I'm interested in your proposal. So the preposition is in. Okay, but the verb is interested. So those are the prepositional verbs. Okay, now the phrasal prepositional verbs, there are phrasal verbs again that require a certain preposition. Okay, I'll give you my PowerPoint. Let me just okay, then you can review that one. Okay.
All right, Dr. Shirley, there is I think there's a person here, Mr. Samuel. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Okay, Doc. Hello.
Oh yes.
Please, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity. You have talked about presidential as one of the lexical items in your version of English.
Yep.
As a Philippine English, right? Yeah. And it appears that in that word, you have attached the affix able.
Able,
yes,
yeah.
or able.
Yeah.
To the root, right?
Yep.
And you explain that it means that, in the context of the Philippine, it means someone running for presidency,
yes,
or someone running for president.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Or it means someone, yeah, or it means a presidential candidate.
Yes. Okay.
Perhaps because of the affix able, the semantics that we should communicate with that word should probably be someone who has the ability to run for president, or someone who has the potential to run for presidency. So
that's
why that disparity? I'm trying to it's a very interesting thing, but then I'm trying to think aloud. Why not someone who has the ability to run for president, or someone who has the potential to run for presidency, but it is a presidential candidate? Is there any difference? Can we try to establish?
I see. Okay. Yeah, you can also use that one in that context. Like, for example, someone who is qualified to run for presidency, she's a presidentiable. You can also say that.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, if you want to, for example, see what the meaning of how presidentiable is used in what context, you can do a corpus investigation. Okay, because if you look at how, for example, they appear in newspapers, then they could mean two things. It could be a person who is qualified, okay, to run as president, or someone who's running for presidency.
Oh, okay. So that one is also possible, right? Okay.
That's right.
Okay. All right. In fact, thank you so much for the clarification on that. I'm very grateful. Very grateful.
Okay. Kindly check the link. I mean, it's perfectly okay, but of course you can only open that one if you have a Google Drive.
Okay, Dr. Shirley, here is another one. If there are no wrong English because of the different varieties of it, how can we explain these to our students when we teach grammar terms, since our textbooks are still based on traditional grammar?
We are not saying that, that's why I presented to you the trend in the English grammar, right? Okay. So the traditional grammar, the teaching of traditional grammar is very prescriptive. You remember? It's very prescriptive. We prescribe the use of the language, right? Oh, you cannot say this. You cannot say that. That's what I emphasize in my lecture. Like you cannot say, for example, I'll give you a traditional rule of grammar. You cannot split infinitive. You cannot put an adjective before or in between the infinitival to and the base form of the verb. That's very prescriptivist approach. Okay, so you cannot prescribe like that. So for example, that's one of the standing rules in the old grammar, in the English grammar, that we cannot split infinitive. So that's one of my papers, and you can Google. We investigated split infinitives and world Englishes and found out that the native speakers, actually the inner circle Englishes, split their infinitives the most. Okay, and there are instances where we need to split infinitives, that it is awkward not to split infinitives. For example, in the Star Trek, if you recall, the opening would be to boldly go. Okay, you cannot say to go boldly or boldly to go. You can only do that one by splitting the infinitive to go, by saying to boldly go. Okay, so again, if we always say that that's wrong English, or that's blah blah blah, that's of course there are performance errors. Okay, performance errors is English grammar. Performance error would be, when you're teaching English language to your students, I mean young learners. Okay, when you're teaching English to young learners, you don't right away talk about world Englishes. You don't right away talk about thinking outside the box. Okay, you have to start, of course, with the basics. Okay, but what this lecture is for the English teachers, because I want you to be to describe how English language is used, or to be more descriptivist in your approach than to be prescriptivist. Okay, because if we start saying that that is incorrect, you cannot say this, you cannot say that, then all the more that speakers are afraid of speaking in English or speaking the language. Okay, because they are afraid that they would be violating a lot of rules in English. Please, how then do we deal with ambiguity if we are to accept every expression or word as innovation and not error? How then do we measure correctness and accuracy? Okay, you see, there's what we call the academic English and the standard English or whatever. Okay, so I'm not saying that any English, anything is okay. Okay, there are of course some parameters to that one. I think towards the end of my lecture, I talk about that one, right? Okay, there are of course parameters in the grammar, okay, and there's also like social aspect of that one, okay. But what I'm trying to emphasize here is that we are not supposed to treat those one as error, okay, or ungrammatical or incorrect. Okay, we have to, what we should be telling our students is that there are many varieties of English, okay, and that your English may not be as or your English may not sound as American English or British English or African English, but your English is perfectly okay. Okay, that your English is, for example, Indian English, that your English is, for example, South African English, that your English is, for example, Nigerian English, or that your English is Philippine English, or whatever kind of English that is. So in that way, we are empowering the pupils were empowering the speakers by recognizing their own varieties of English. Of course, there's not just one English. We just don't sound one, okay? I mean, we know that Ghanaian English, for example, has distinct, okay, phonology. You have distinct accent, okay, in the same manner as Philippine English has very distinct accent, okay, or Australian English has very distinct accent, or British English has very distinct accent. So that's just for the phonological side, okay. Grammar side, lexis, for example, grammar, syntax, we also have distinct features. I've shown you a bit. For example, you have some lexical items that are only known to Ghanaian English speakers. There are some structures that are only known to Philippines, and so forth and so on. Okay. Yes, we don't correct the errors. For me, I do not advocate for that, like correcting the errors right away. Okay, because all the more that speakers will not acquire the language, but we can show them, okay, the varieties of English that I don't know what you are endorsing. For example, if you are following the British English in Ghana, then you can mention that, okay, in British English, this is how they say it, okay, but there are, you know, in Ghanaian English, this is how we say it, okay. So there are also other potential structures and not just one structure. That's what I'm saying, because if you tell the kid right away that that's incorrect, that is wrong, that's ungrammatical, okay, then all the more that the kids will be I don't know, probably traumatized, okay. But what we have discussed, as you have seen, would be all about grammar. So I of course I still believe that, you know, there are characteristics of grammar, right? We talk about, you know, the structure of, for example, verb phrases, there are structure of adverbials, blah blah blah, and so forth and so on. But at the same time, I'm also advocating that the approach to teaching English grammar should be corpus based. Okay, it should be corpus based. So if we look at the corpus, for example, so this is the British English, or this is what is prescribed by American English or British English, but look at the other varieties of English. For instance, I gave you example. Okay, so the prescribed would be based on, right? So everyone says based on, but in other varieties there are some innovations to that. Okay, for example, in Philippine English they say based from. That is not incorrect. It's innovation of based on. Okay, so American English or British English would say result in, but there are innovations to that. Though we don't call those errors, those are innovations. Okay. It's almost 3 hours now. Okay. I'm trying to send you a copy of my lecture, of my PowerPoint. You can study again if you wish. You can go back. Okay. Anything else?
I think that's now.
Hello?
Hello, Dr.
Okay.
Shirley. Yes, I think that's all for now. We don't have any more questions.
I can hear. Okay. Yes. Anything else, or we can probably end the lecture already since it's 7:45. Okay.
Yes, I believe that's all for now. So you can probably end the lecture. And thank you so much, Dr. Shirley. It's been an awesome time with you. We are so grateful. I also Ghana. I also members international. We thank you so much for this insightful session. And we believe that that's the beginning. We're going to have more of such sessions in the coming year, where you're going to handle most of the topics we have here for us. Thank you so much. Thank you for honoring the invitation. Thank you for being with us. It's been more than 2 hours, but it's worth it. We are so grateful. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
So, Dr. Shirley, before you go, let's quickly get into the awarding of certificates. Then,
Oh, okay.
yeah. Thank you. All right, so let me share my screen quickly. All right, so we have this certificate of appreciation going to Dr. Shirley Dita for generously sharing her time, effort, and expertise as special speaker of the webinar entitled The Teaching of Grammar, Trends, and Trajectories, awarded this with the 6th day of November 2022 via Zoom. And this certificate is signed by Dr. Neil Arvalo Alcantara, President of IELTS International, Dr. Glenn Parilla Cortizano, Academic Director, IELTS International, Ms. Fatty is the President of IELTS Ghana, Mr. Jacob Moisokando, Vice President of IELTS Ghana, Mr. Alfred Clayton, the Academic Director, IELTS Ghana, and yours truly, Ebenezer, the Ambassador of IELTS Ghana. We are so grateful. Thank you once again. So, dear participants, this also goes to you. You will fill out the evaluation form for your certificates after the webinar. Thank you so much, Dr. Shirley. All right, before we go, shall we take the closing remarks from Ms. Fatty, the President of IELTS Ghana. Hello, Ms. Fatty. Hello, Ms. Fatty. All right, so that's it for today. Thank you so much, Dr. Shirley. We are hoping that in the months to come, we will have another wonderful session with you. We are so grateful. Thank you.